I'll get straight to the key finding from our research, which a lot of people were saying things like, you have to scare people into action. You have to make them angry. Anger motivates people, da, 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 da. What we found, and this is a very strong, statistically significant finding, and we looked at everything. We looked at, where you're from. This is all Americans, I should say. Okay. We looked at where you're from, your gender, your race, your income, all the things. And we found that the one thing that motivates increased climate-friendly behavior is the experience of joy while watching a piece of content. Joy.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the On the Rise podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Extavor. On today's episode, we continue our conversation with filmmaker, producer, and writer Sabrina McCormick. Sabrina is an award winner. She's a documentary film producer. She's a feature film writer and producer. She's many things. Also an academic scholar and researcher whose research directly informs her stories and her storytelling. If you love part one, you're going to love this second part where we continue the conversation. The first one was focused a little bit more about the storytelling craft and the industry and how she approaches it and how she does her work, including the project she's working on right now, which she was quite tight-lipped about. I have to say, I tried to get her to give some details, but she was really holding them back. That's cool. In this episode, we get a little bit more into how do you tell climate stories? Not a touchy-feely, yay, kumbaya climate story, but just any climate story that's going to resonate. How do you connect with people in a way that actually moves the needle forward or just even gets entertainment value from people? Sabrina is the type of person that knows how to do this. We talked about how the situation in South Africa after apartheid ended and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is actually connected to climate. That sounds like a crazy departure, but she actually connects it right in. We talked about the 7 archetypal stories that have been with humanity, it sounds like, for millennia. And we ask which one of these can actually be useful as a good climate story. So here's part 2 of a pretty great conversation with Sabrina McCormick, visionary, filmmaker, director, writer, and scholar. Here's Sabrina. What is climate storytelling, and how are climate stories typically told today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question, and I'm so glad you're asking it because I think there is a really big misconception about what climate storytelling should be or is or how it works best or whatever. And not to slam storytellers to date, well, although I'll put myself in that category, I think there's been a lot of really tough, not so helpful, problematic climate storytelling that has been super on the nose. It's really, I think, made people feel like climate is something, out there, over there, in another time period, affecting another person, doesn't have anything to do with me. And, look, I'm a sociologist by training, and I see climate as something that just climate change, global warming, that surrounds us. It affects every aspect of our lives. And so to me, a climate story, is it like, let's just talk about it, right? I think it's, a climate story, climate storytelling can be can surface any aspect of all of these phenomena that these changes we've created is fomenting. I don't know. I personally really prefer climate storytelling that helps us understand what's happening and what to do about it. But I think there's a lot of storytelling that is not that.
Well, okay. I think, yes, this is a great place to start. The way I probably experienced climate storytelling, and I trained more in the engineering and physical sciences when I was academic. And that's just kind of my personality and how I think about a lot of things. But when I became aware of the climate thing, I didn't really consider myself to be an environmentalist. And I guess in a lot of ways I still don't. But the point is, that was what I was familiar with as the climate story. Oh, the climate story is like a big environment story. And so that had touch points of like, there's a big blue, green earth ball. Or I'm not trying to be silly. Or like, don't litter. Right? Don't litter was something this is like a child, me in middle school. Oh yeah, don't litter. And that's kind of, or the polar ice caps, that's global warming, and don't litter. It's something we talk about on Earth Day. It's
Right.
also related to like composting and the garden. These are all things. These
True.
are all things I love. These
It's
are all things I
totally
love. Okay,
It's
so
totally
like that's
true.
one type of climate story.
That's hilarious.
And I think there's a more recent climate story.
Composting. Wait, you left out recycling.
Why do you hate composting?
I love composting.
Okay.
Oh my God. I love it so
Good.
much. I'm a huge gardener, and composting is the answer for both methane reduction
Everyone always
and
says
gardening.
That. No, I'm not. I'm making fun. Everyone else. Okay, look. Okay, I believe you. We'll talk composting later.
I'll show you my DIY composting bin. It's like so ugly, but it really works. You just take 2 of those big plastic bins, which we all have too many of them, and you drill holes in the top one and you drop it in the bottom one. You find it on YouTube, and it works.
Okay, that's one climate story. Let's call it the blue-green story. And another one, and I want you to tell me about some others. Another one that's, I think, more emergent is someone has done something bad to you.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out who it was, and we got to get them. We got to stop it. Again, even though we're joking, I'm not trying to say these are right or wrong, but do you think these are the classic climate stories? Are there other ones? And what's wrong with them if you say that there's a lot of climate storytelling that you haven't appreciated? Before we get into what you like, let's talk about what is or what you've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, look, you always have to have a good guy and a bad guy. Okay. You know, you kind of do. Or else what's the tension and the conflict? I mean, it doesn't always have to be tension, conflict, and driving a story, but most people say it does. So, you know, that means you have to have a good a protagonist and an antagonist. This is classic storytelling.
But who's the protagonist and antagonist in that blue-green environmental gardening compost thing there? There's no protagonist. Gardening. I'm not going to say it anymore because
so good.
For real, who's the protagonist in composting? No, okay.
No one.
I'm challenging the view that there always has to be a hero and a villain.
Really?
Of course
okay.
That works well, but
you just tell me of a film or a TV series or a book or anything that you like that doesn't have a protagonist and an antagonist. Tell me one.
You're right. I can't. You're right.
Yeah, you can't. Right. Exactly. Not one.
It's a good challenge. If I think of one, I'll speak up, but I cannot. So please continue.
You won't.
Okay.
So, but that is a really good point in the climate context, right? Because who done it? Right? Who done it? I'll tell you who done it. We all done it. However, you know, there are lots of bigger players, you know, stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, that lied. Okay. That's bad. We all know lying is bad. Or, you know, took advantage of other people or killed people or, you know, all the things. And, you know, I think that surfacing the truth and creating accountability around the ways that we have gotten to where we are at is vital to the process of moving forward. I mean, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. Do you remember that?
Of course. So
I was doing a summer of service at the Martin Luther King Center for Social Justice. For nonviolent social change in Atlanta, where I'm from, when the 2 guys from the MLK Center came back from South Africa, and they had been training people in nonviolent social change in the process of that Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which if for those who are listening or watching this don't remember, was the process through which South Africans were undoing the trauma, the lived experience of apartheid, which is horrifically violent and was decades long, was, you know, wasn't as bad, let's say, as climate change, which is a global, but was like horrific for that country.
I'd say it was like, and this took place in the early to through mid 90s, I think, even through the late 90s. And I would probably say the process is ongoing. And you're right. Like, it was, this is starting to be history, but everyone knows, but this was let's call it an extremely deep fissure in the society.
Yes.
That then they were trying to find a way to heal and move on after what seemed like generations of just unhealable hurt and pain. I mean, there were other words you could use, but I think that's roughly what was happening. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what's taking place at the time. So you were
Yeah.
saying the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was
Yeah,
about.
and so as a part of that process, right, were that some of the people who had conducted the worst of it
Yeah.
were held in public view, admitting and apologizing, which is fucking nuts to me. Like you okay, A, those people did it, and B, they weren't pummeled to death or stoned to death or whatever in the process. And but I think about this a lot in regards to the fossil fuel industry, to be honest. And the money that is being made in that industry, it is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And who is benefiting and who is being harmed, right? And that's only going to get a lot worse. And I think, like, could we hold the truth? Anyway, the point, back to your question about storytelling, which I don't even fully remember exactly what you asked, but I do feel like it's a possibility of it's an opportunity for us to surface the truth, hold to account, and move beyond.
You've said a couple things that I think are really interesting. I want to pick up and move forward. You've talked about how important it is. I sort of lightly challenged, you need heroes and villains. You quickly proved that, yeah, we really need that duality in a lot of stories. No, that's okay. I didn't really believe it. I'm just sort of looking for exceptions because they're interesting. You also talked about doing these kinds of things in public and being aware. And so, but also stories that you have seen and you think maybe have been damaging and is not exactly how you think about it. So bearing some of those things in mind, you've talked about different approaches to stories. What are some of the ways that you think about climate storytelling? What and how do you think they're effective for particular audiences? I know this is something you've done a lot of, but is there something distinct about your approach, or do you think you're just really bringing your own creative energy to traditional storytelling approaches?
Well, I mean, I think I am unique in the way that I am both a researcher and a filmmaker, and I'm not saying I am great at either, but I do both. And
You are, don't
one
be
of
honest.
the areas of research that I have engaged in is how climate stories affect audiences, right? And so the first we created something we call the impact tracker in order to really understand this on an individual level, not an aggregate level, which is an online platform. You enter it, we ask you questions, we watch you watch a piece of content. Now we ask you, you know that we're watching you. We're using facial recognition software, so we track your second by second emotional response, and then we ask you questions afterwards. And then the first study we asked you questions 2 weeks later and 4 weeks later, and so we can see how that emotional experience. Well, first of all, what your emotional experience is, and secondly, how that's related to changes in beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, change, all that stuff, all self-reported. So there's limitations to it, but just I'll get straight to the key finding from
Yeah.
our research, which, a lot of people were saying things like you have to scare people into action, you have to make them angry, anger motivates people, da 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 da. What we found, and this is a very strong, statistically significant finding, and we looked at everything. We looked at, where you're from. This is all Americans, I should say.
Okay.
We looked at where you're from, your gender, your race, your income, your all the things. And we found that the one thing that motivates increased climate friendly behavior is the experience of joy while watching a piece of content. Joy.
Say that again. The one thing that motivates positive or behavior is the experience of joy towards while watching climate content. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So, like, I know it was totally surprising to me, but after a while, I kind of got used to it, and especially when we dug into the qualitative
Yeah.
pieces of it,
Uh-huh.
it's not. We want to be inspired, right? This is a really tough existential crisis that is deeply frightening for many people, myself included at times, right? Like, what is going on? And am I and my family and everyone to be able to survive? Da da da. In that context, right? People want to see a way forward. And if you show them a way forward and you give them the experience of being excited and enthusiastic and inspired by it, they're more likely to do something. I mean, I don't think it's that different than like dieting, right? It's like, I don't feel myself. I want to feel better. And then I'm going to, they showed me a way to do it. I'm going to try it. Maybe I can do it too.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm biased because that's the kind of finding I want to know about, because that's the kind of thing I believe. That's why, we're trying to do the show. But if that's true, then why is there so little of that kind of climate content out there? And just going back to the hero and the villain, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
important to expose the villain if in the truth and reconciliation framework they can realize for themselves in public where they were wrong. And I can see that's a super powerful thing.
Yeah.
But why is there so little of the inspiring stuff if that's the thing that you have shown actually moves action?
Well, in my experience, I have heard producers say regularly that solution stories are boring. They're boring.
Are they boring in the same way that good news is not news? Like,
I guess. I don't
weather
know.
predictors correctly predict the weather again. Is never a headline. Mid-level bureaucrat does her job with aplomb. Crisis averted. 10,000th day in a row.
Exactly.
You're welcome.
Exactly.
The water is clean, and the power didn't go out. Like that's not news. Is it like that, or is it boring for some other reason? Is it boring because there's no tension and
there's
drama,
no tension and conflict,
and that's what creative people like, and that's why the sequel is always the dark version instead of Batman gets darker. We're gonna redo your favorite childhood tale, but it's gonna be the dark version because. No, but I mean, is that cultural zeitgeist? Are they tapping into something that's real and true about storytelling that just works better and connects with us better than this inspirational softy stuff? Like, how does that square with your findings?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm struggling with or working with a lot, and we do have to bring the dog up now because she's very determined. Here she is. Hello.
She may know.
So, what?
She may know. She has ideas to contribute.
Well, let's ask her. She clearly doesn't know. Okay, she actually really wants to jump over on that. Okay. It's something I've been struggling with a lot because this project I'm working on right now, it is oriented around this finding.
Okay.
And people keep trying to talk me out of the happy ending,
Do you find that you get a lot of positive feedback? I think I know the answer to the inspirational side of things. Like
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I mean, when I'm asking folks like, would you listen to a podcast? I mean, person after person after person just says things like, what are we supposed to do?
Yep.
And can you show us something that's actually happening or positive?
Yep.
And there will be people but how do you get that kind of feedback for the inspirational side of what you're working on? How do people respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very person specific, right? But I feel like, yeah, I mean, first of all, my whole career, people are like, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do.
Okay.
My whole career. Okay. And it used to be people, I would say, okay, well, here you can do X, Y, Z. And they'd say, well, the government will just take care of it.
The difference between things to be done and what I need to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll take care of it. And I have always been like, okay, I worked at EPA. Good luck with that, So, but in any case, I think people I'm not going to give away too many details about my current project, but I think people love to see the character on screen with whom they are having an emotional connection, a cathartic experience. They love to see them struggle and overcome, right?
Okay.
But the overcoming is not interesting without the struggle, right? Because this is who we are as humans, right? Like we are fucking struggling. And sometimes we feel like we overcome. Mostly we don't, but sometimes we do. And God, do I want to see somebody else have a hard time so that I feel like I'm not the only one, but I also want to see how they do it so that I can figure out, yeah, maybe I can do it too, right? So when I say like happy, joy, whatever, I'm not saying the whole thing is happy and joy. That's actually some of our research shows that kind of Pollyanna stuff really doesn't work, right? So, and I understand why.
It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem real.
Exactly. It's fake.
Like a toddler show, right? Where everything is happy, joy.
Yeah. But would those be useful? I mean, it would be interesting to see.
For children. They'd be interesting for,
Maybe for,
4-year-olds.
well, maybe for children. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, that's a good
well,
question.
e- even even older children have sort of started to figure out, the world I was exposed to, if you grew up in that world when I was 3, 4, 5, is not actually the world. You start to become aware of the world of adults pretty quick, as we've all figured out, or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember.
So true.
Okay, I love the way you had a brilliant answer to this question about why aren't there more of these inspirational stories, and you kind of brought it back around to comment that we really do, as people, want to follow a story, or we like to follow a story of challenge and struggle and then overcoming, ideally, or following a character on an arc. What I want to ask you now is, do you think there are unique storytelling opportunities connected to the climate topic that you don't find that you can access with other topics? Is there something kind
Mm.
of specific, or is it perhaps really more about bringing some of the classic, well-worn storytelling techniques that perhaps haven't been deployed in climate as much, some of the stuff you talked about, and trying to make a good trouble that way?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I know the answer. I definitely think the second thing that you said is true. So let's just apply what we
Yes,
know about storytelling to climate,
totally.
like that, for sure. It is super important, and I'm just going to keep using the term climate, even though that's not really accurate. And I'll just, for
Yeah,
what I
no,
think
please.
is important climate storytelling, and I'll just give you an example. I
Yeah.
believe that one of the most important, if not the most important, climate intervention is giving women access to family planning,
Aha, okay.
you know? And if we can reduce population growth, especially of high income countries, like, well, now it's less of an issue, but anyway, super important, not a climate story, right? But
Or
to
a
me, it
story.
is.
Yes, okay. I just happened to be reading about population growth this morning, just by random chance,
Oh, wow.
learning some new things. But maybe we could call it a story that is not typically considered a climate story.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going there a little bit because that's, Vishrut and I talk about this a lot, but that's one of the ways we think we can really help people see and consider climate in a different way,
Mhm.
without being too preachy, is to say, like, hey, there actually are a lot of stories we're already familiar with, or topics, or ways of
Mm.
engaging with stuff. Hey, they actually kind of relate to climate. Like, you talked about
Mhm.
um, education of women and girls, sexual freedom, access to family planning. This is a bit of a non sequitur, but energy and technology were sort of my main conduits into the climate topic.
Yeah, sure.
They're maybe not as far afield, depending on your perspective, but not every climate person automatically thinks energy or technology are part of the conversation. But there's a
Mm.
ton of people that think about those things, just like there's a
Mm.
ton of people that think about public health,
Yeah,
family planning for women and families. So ways to come at the topic. Maybe there are interesting stories there too. So that's something
for
we'll be
sure.
kind of
For
looking for.
sure. Yeah, and I mean, I just, again, to not like give it away, but the project that I'm working on now is, it has a lot to do with energy, and it has a lot to do with health. And
Yeah.
we don't say climate once in this movie.
Is that, well, I think what you do is intentional, but was that something that just sort of emerged from the way you're thinking about it? Or did you kind of sit down and say, hey, team, we just don't want to use the C word for reasons?
Well, it's both, really. I mean, first, and there is this question. I'm curious what you think. Like, do you have to say climate change when you're talking to people about these issues? I mean, just in terms of like, if your motivation is solving the problems, you have to say it. And I don't think you do, but like, we did purposely not say it. I think there was maybe one moment that I wanted to write it that we didn't. And then I like really thought about like, well, why do I need it?
Yeah.
Do I need it? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't I put it? And
Yeah.
part of the reason for not putting it is we really do want to reach a very diverse audience, and it's a politicized term, which, let's also remember, the origination of that term climate change was actually by a conservative strategist, right?
That's
So
right.
it displacing global warming and using climate change to neutralize the topic. So fuck it, right? Like, why do we need to use that term anyway?
We don't need to use it. Not just because we're in an era of language police a little bit, United
Yeah,
States,
we are. Yeah.
or let's if we don't call it language police, we'll say the term has gone out of fashion.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really paying attention to the topic when it was called global warming,
Yeah.
uh, and I therefore was not worked up when I noticed that it was climate change.
Yeah.
Um, I've my younger self wanted to win the argument, and so my younger self would have said, "Yeah, you have to say climate change because that's what it is,
Yeah.
and f those people that are trying to tell you what words you can say and not say."
Yeah.
Um, I don't really care about winning the argument anymore. Maybe I'm just getting old. Now I want to solve the problem more. So now I'm a little bit more like, I'm going to say whatever is going to connect to you.
Right.
And the flip side of that is, if there's a phrase that I like or a word that I like that is, when I say it, when it comes out of my mouth, you're just like, I'm not going to listen to another thing this dude says. I'm not going to say it because I'd rather communicate and have a conversation with that person. So that's a long-winded answer, but maybe a more succinct answer is, even if you're not trying to be cute with language or connect to somebody really specifically that way, the phenomenon of the changing climate is not something that I think we experience directly. It's something we experience indirectly, like why can't I buy fire insurance for a house where I live? Why is this land flooded? Why is this cost gone up? Why has this risk gone up? Why are people moving from this place to that place? Why can't we do the things we used to do? And so none of those things are going to be called climate change because that's not what they are.
Right.
So for me, even without the thinking carefully with the language, it's another argument to be like, well, call it what it is. The actual specific thing you're talking about, call it what it is. And if you are speaking actually about global climate systems, then it's going to be people that are attracted to that language. But it's okay to use words to reach your audience. That's what I'm trying to say.
I agree with you. And back to the question that you posed in regards to, are there unique stories to be told in the climate context? I think one of the biggest challenges is connecting the cause and the effect, right? Which the climate is the mediator between cause and effect almost always. So I drive, my car's an EV, so I can't, I burn fossil fuel somehow, it heats the atmosphere, and then, there's a flood, right? So like, there's so many steps. And I think that I'm certainly there are other global phenomenon that are plagued by that level of distension between cause and effect. So chemicals and contaminants,
Yes.
other things. But climate is, I think, not unique entirely, but more difficult than many issues because of that, distance. And I think that while it's, and just to add another layer of complexity, the temporal horizon, right? So it takes time. It's not, I do it now and then even in a week or a month, right? So like, just
It's
to
a
go
slow
back to
moving
the weight.
thing. That means that the problems creep up slowly. The
Exactly.
solutions take time to diffuse.
And again, I mean, chemicals are the same still, right? Or biodiversity loss or whatever. Those things are similar. Having said that, I think I'm just thinking this as I'm saying it as I'm thinking it now, but I think, it's both challenging, but I think it's a unique proposition to the human species. And this is unique to this moment in history, which is that we are becoming such an intricate Jesus Christ, intricately related community, right? I got it. Yeah, the small wins. Community, and the climate crisis is a wake-up call to how closely related we are to one another by what we do. And I think that, like, if we can accommodate that in storytelling somehow, that's like a huge, I don't know, I think that's a huge win.
I love that sentiment. Okay, we've got our eye on the clock. We're going to close it out here. This is going to sound like a non sequitur, but on that note that you just ended on, and we were chatting about this before off air, you've got to go watch Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Vish, Sabrina doesn't know about Hail Mary yet, but she's about to. We were espousing our love for it briefly.
No, I was saying that the only thing I know about Hail Mary is the trailer, which it kept getting pushed to me, and I
Yes.
kept thinking it was an SNL video. It's like,
At first
so
glance, I was just like, okay, American dude is the hero of a movie with technology. Like, great. Add it to the 10,000 of those
right,
that I'll
exactly.
consider watching this year. But it's not quite that. No more to be said. Last segment I want to hit. It's sometimes said there are only 7 stories.
Yeah.
Only 7 human stories. Do you agree with that, just briefly, that you can boil all of our stories down to 7 or some number of archetypical standard, or not standard, but classic stories that we come back to over and over? Real quick. Yes, no?
I mean, I have a hard time imagining any beyond the 7, right? That's my problem.
Okay. I once had a
Can
roommate
you?
well, maybe. Maybe I'll finally come up with the 8th that has no hero or villain, like we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Now, I had a roommate that made me do the Myers-Briggs test for the first time.
Yeah.
And I hated it and refused, because my thing was, you can't box me in. There are not 16 personality types.
Right.
Now I've done it a couple of times, and I'm sort of like, well, I mean, I could kind of see. I'm definitely this, and I'm definitely that, and like I've definitely met people. So, okay, but here are the 7, and the question is, just kind of lightning round for fun. For each of these, could this be a useful climate story?
Great, let's do it. How fun. Okay, I haven't looked at the 7 in a long time, so this is going to be really fun.
Monster. Overcoming the monster. A hero must defeat an evil force threatening their world.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, you could conceive of the weather disaster as a monster. It could be day after tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Like the ice age, the approaching, whatever, all the things, the collapse of the thermohaline circulating pattern. That's just one example.
Does that, and like, Don't Look Up, the movie was sort of a disaster movie,
right,
and that's also kind of overcoming. I was very mixed on that. I was sort of like,
me too,
not loving it.
I actually wrote a piece in the New York Times about how problematic I thought it was, and they published it.
Everybody go read Sabrina's piece.
No, I should have said that out loud.
I will say that I hated the part where Leo looked right into the camera and just started shouting for 5 minutes. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Oh, I don't remember that part.
Okay, overcoming the monster. Check. Rags to riches. Started out low and poor.
Absolutely, because you know what? This moment we are in is the biggest economic transformation in human history. Going from a fossil fuel-based economy to a sustainable economy, it is fucking huge. And there are people ahead of this game, and they are going to win.
Okay, so it's going to be like Succession, but for climate.
Absolutely.
Not even. They're going to be like clean energy billionaire families arguing about how to.
Those people are well on their way to existing.
Okay, we're 2 for 2. The Quest. A hero seeks a specific object, location, or goal while facing numerous obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, well, I'm not going to tell my movie story, but my movie story falls into that. He really wants to fix something. Let's just say that. He wants to find something.
As a nerd, I love quest stories, and so I want to believe that this one can be a good climate story too. Voyage and return. You go to a strange land, and then we come back, like The Wizard of Oz.
Now it's your turn. I spitball.
I was going to say something about time travel. That's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Oh, I like that.
We go to the future. I'm mixing stories now, like the Ghost of Christmas Future. We go to the future. We see how, like, oh yeah, we actually solved all these problems, or most of them.
Love it.
And life continued to get better. And all the people that said it was unsolvable were wrong. And we knew they were wrong at the time, but now we've shown that they're wrong. And we're going to take some tips back and do it a little more efficiently. That's
because
kind of Star Trek.
I love that. The Age of Stupid is basically a hybrid doc that exists that's the opposite of that.
Okay, what is the Age of Stupid? I don't know anything about that.
It's basically, it's like vignettes of what we're doing today and then we jump forward to, I can't remember the name of the actor who is in the future of a post-apocalyptic world, and he's like, why didn't you do more of the good thing? Why didn't you,
A lot of sci-fi, as you know, the premise is the future's shit. And we're in the future sort of looking back on the past where the audience is thinking,
exactly.
Man, we fucked this up. How do we...
Don't love it. Yeah, it's hard.
Okay, a couple more. Comedy. Misunderstandings, confusions, happy endings. Gotta have happy ending in a comedy. This is a little closer to what we were talking about earlier about you getting pressure about... I'm not trying to say your thing is a comedy, but Can a comedy be a climate story?
I really want to introduce comedic elements to what I'm making. And you know what I'm really into is physical comedy. I just think it's hilarious. And why don't we do it anymore, really?
There was a woman that pitched a TV show at your climate comedy pitch fest. By the way, are you
Yeah.
doing that at New York Climate Week again this year?
We are not planning it right now because my shoot schedule is moving and it may
Uh,
overlap with that, but it TBD, so I can't plan anything
okay.
else.
I think you should do it. You're a busy filmmaker, blah, blah, blah. You're so busy filming, blah, blah, blah. But I think you should do it. No, I'm kidding.
No.
I remember there was a woman that pitched, and
Yes.
the physical, right? The premise was
Yes.
there's a lady going through menopause and she lives in a town called Hell and it's hot as hell. Isn't this hilarious? It's not quite physical comedy, but it was a lot of like her having hot flashes in the office. It was an office drama.
So good.
Okay. Two more. Tragedy. A protagonist is undone by a fatal flaw or fate resulting in a loss or death. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the no-brainer
That's
one,
kind of
right?
somber, but yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It was
a lot of
funnier to
that.
laugh at the menopausal lady in the office than to think about tragedy, but that's real.
That's real.
That's real.
That's real.
The first chapter of the book Ministry for the Future
Oh my God.
is tragic and stayed with me. I mean, it's been with me for years. I read it years ago.
I
Last
read
one.
that first chapter and then I stopped reading it. I put the book down for a year and then went back and finished it.
I put it down for a while too, not a year. After everybody reads Sabrina's editorial about Don't Look Up, everybody check out the book. But also the first chapter. The first chapter is very manageable. You may want to take a break after it. Rebirth, okay. The last story type. We'll get you out of here on this. A character breaks free from dark control or redemption is achieved, leading
Isn't
to a
that what we're all going to be doing right now? We're going to be broken free from like the potential hell of a 3.5 degrees C, world and fossil fuels and air pollution. And we're going to be rebirth. You guys, this is a great place to end on the thing. We are going to, I deeply believe that this transformation we are a part of is going to be more glorious, more stupendous, more amazing than we can ever imagine.
Dr. Sabrina McCormick, the scholar, the filmmaker, the creative, the visionary. Thank you so much. This has been a treat. Really appreciate your time.
So nice to see you. Thank you so much. This is so fun. The time flew by.
Awesome. Well, that is a wrap. There you have it, part 2 of my conversation with Sabrina McCormick. I'd love to hear what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback about this one in particular. Sabrina is a real special guest, and she's got a pretty unique opinion. But before we close today, I'd love to bring in somebody else who you'll get to know very well and who's also got some opinions about storytelling, about creative writing, about how to approach this kind of thing. This is our producer, Vish. Vish, welcome in. So I know you were excited about this conversation too with Sabrina as somebody that thinks about creative writing and storytelling. Just curious what you thought of this conversation. How did it all go for you?
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. I really enjoyed the conversation with Sabrina. I think these are the kinds of conversations around communicating about climate change and how do we get it into the broader media that we need to be having. And I thought some of her insight into like how decisions get made inside of the film industry were also really interesting. One point that I really made me think was when you and Sabrina were talking about heroes and villains in storytelling and in particular in the climate story. And you were asking her, what is in this blue-green environmental story that we tend to tell? Like, that's one of the stories we tend to tell about climate. Like, who is the hero and who is the villain? And you guys kind of moved off that point a little bit, but I was thinking about it. And for me, in that story, the hero is the planet itself. The hero in planet Earth, the hero is not the cheetah or the deer. The hero is actually the ecosystem. And it doesn't really matter to David Attenborough if the cheetah wins or the deer escapes. It's about, the fact that this is all working together. And the villain is us, really. Like, we're invading this natural ecosystem and like, poisoning it or something. And to be clear, I love planet Earth. I love our planet. David Attenborough is fantastic to listen to. But in that story that we tell, I think that for me, that's the dynamic. And in the other kind of story that you pointed out, where someone has done something to you, who's the hero and who's the villain? well, the villain is the person that's done something to you, but you aren't the hero. You're the victim in that story. You're the person that the villain is doing something to, and the hero is someone else that needs to come in and save you. Might be the government or some corporation, or whoever's telling that story probably is the hero in their minds. And so we're not really telling a story of heroes and villains where the person watching it feels like they have a lot of agency to create positive change is kind of what I was taking away from that. And so that comes to the next question I thought of, which is, what is a hero and what is a villain? Which is, a hero is someone who saves the day. Villain wants to destroy the world. That's kind of the clear dichotomy. And we don't really quite have heroes and villains in the climate story, right? You mentioned disaster movies earlier in intro, and this isn't one of those where the aliens are coming in and they're the villains and we and Will Smith are the heroes, or, in Star Wars where the Death Star is the villain and, Luke Skywalker is going to use the Force and be the hero. Climate is so much more complex than that. It's a bunch of different things happening at once and simultaneously to quote unquote save the day, but it's hard to put just like one person in that spot. And so for me, I don't think the hero villain framing works as well for climate. What I would kind of put forward is like the protagonist antagonist framing, which is not dissimilar. Like, heroes are a version of protagonist and villains are a version of an antagonist. But protagonists are the people that the story focuses on, who want to do something. They have like a goal. They have agency. They're moving towards that goal. And antagonists are people who get in their way. And so when we're talking about climate as a story, it's not that we have like a villain that we need to be saying like this person is bad, because if you just switch the framing of many stories that have protagonists and antagonists, you switch their roles as well. Does that make sense?
Okay. I think it does make sense. You said a lot of things. Let me get into it. I think I agree with some of them. I think I disagree with some of them. So let's try. So antagonist, protagonist. Is that really different than hero and villain? It's still two opposing forces, and the central tension is what drives a story. Are they so different?
I think so, because I think you can have a protagonist who is not a hero. You can have
yes.
And you can have an antagonist who is not a villain, because I think like if you told the story of Superman from where like I forget who the villain Superman is, Lex Luthor, sure, and you focus the story of the Superman on Lex Luthor and what Lex Luthor was trying to do, then Lex Luthor would be the protagonist, but he would still be the villain.
Okay. I think that's fair enough. Maybe something else that comes to mind for me is, we talked about fantasy writing sometimes. The Game of Thrones novels and then smash hit HBO show. First, that was interesting and different from classic good and evil tales like Lord of the Rings and a million other fairy tales, because the good characters did bad things and the bad characters became good, and they were more messy and complex. And so it was character development on an arc, but also surprising in a way that fantasy almost never is. It can be pretty cut and dry, even though I love that genre too. And I think that's I'm probably not the only one who thinks this. I think that's why it was such a smash hit. It broke out of the nerd universe and became a huge hit that people that just like TV dramas could watch, even though it's extremely dorky because it's this medieval swords and knights and chivalry play, right? It's wild. So the complexity of the characters, I think one of the things I was struggling with when we were talking about Sabrina, and coming back to something you said about, it's hard to fit climate stories maybe neatly into the hero and villain, or the idea that the people are a victim and something is being done to us and we need the hero to come and save the day. That thing, we are victims and we need somebody to come save the day. For me, that is the most common narrative, and people recognize that there is a villain. Exxon, the oil and gas industry, the government, the Senate, this president, that president, like whoever you think it is, America, right? And for somebody else in the part of the world might say, the number one oil and gas exporter, let's not forget. So I'm not totally, I even though I don't quite agree with that framing, And I definitely, as somebody that thinks I have agency to actually work on solutions, I don't like the idea that we're just going to sit around and wave signs and wait for somebody to come and save us. But I think a ton of people believe that. So maybe the only question I have back to you is, I think I'm saying I agree that climate stories are hard to fit into the villain hero framework. And that's why I was struggling a bit with Sabrina and I couldn't think of anything on the spot. But my last question is, why do you think that framework is so appealing to a lot of people? Or if you don't think it is, maybe why not?
I think that framing is appealing because it's a story that's, one, easier to tell, but two, also easier to follow. If you have one or a few obstacles that a single person can overcome to save the world, if you have Luke Skywalker who just needs to learn the Force well enough to be able to guide the missile into that one like ventilation shaft to blow up the Death Star, then that's a really easy story to follow for,
yes,
okay, this is how we solve this problem. And
it's
makes us feel inspired.
Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I sorry to cut you off. It makes us feel inspired, and it also, I was going to say, it's something he can do alone. Or like,
yes,
he just has to like study and meditate with Yoda or whatever, and then he can do it. It's not like he has to like, I don't know, go build a coalition and raise some money and convince 10,000 people that he has a good idea.
Right. It's that like we can see him make progress throughout that, and then he accomplishes his task and it defeats the villain. And that makes us feel that inspiration and that joy that Sabrina was talking about. And we're like, okay, now we can move forward. And that's why I think you talked about Don't Look Up in your earlier intro. That's why Don't Look Up is an easy analogy. Like an asteroid hitting the Earth is the single thing that's coming towards the Earth that if we can just destroy this asteroid, then we've solved the problem. We can all focus in on this one mission to destroy the asteroid. With climate, it's, I think, much harder because there's so many different things and aspects. It has a bunch of different, like, that's what the show's about, is like all the different things that climate affects. It affects so many different things. It causes impacts. And so we need solutions from a whole different bunch of people. So, imagine if Luke, learned the Force and he shot the missile into the ventilation shaft, and then 500 other things had to happen that we didn't see, but all those 500 things had to happen in order to blow up the Death Star. That feels less satisfying to us. It feels kind of like Deus Ex Machina, where like author's hand is coming in and saying, you saw this one story, but you actually don't know the entire picture. And so we feel kind of cheated out of like, we earned that. We used the Force. And, with climate, there's all of these bunch of different things that need to happen. And a lot of the stories that you referenced either in this episode or previous episodes are about individuals. It's about that woman in that city who's experiencing hot flashes and her dealing with that. It's about, it's a single person that's experiencing those things that they have to overcome. So I think that's why it's so tough.
I really hadn't thought about it this way. I like the kind of way you're framing it. I feel like you're hitting on, I mean, maybe that's why we can't solve this problem, or it's so hard for us to come together to solve these problems. But maybe, like, less jokingly, I think you're touching on why if it's true that it's easier for us to connect with that hero villain story, and the villain or the bad thing is condensed into a singular avatar of the badness, like in the example you gave about the asteroid in Don't Look Up. If that is the kind of story that we naturally jive with, and climate doesn't easily fall into that because it's indirect cause and effect is a little fuzzy, or it feels fuzzy to us and it's hard to explain, like Sabrina mentioned, or it doesn't fit the paradigm like you mentioned. Maybe that's one of the reasons people have a hard time connecting with just the topic, and it makes it easier to dismiss, like, oh, this can't really be a real thing because real things that are acute can be expressed in this hero villain thing. I'm not sure. I'm kind of riffing on it, but you're making me think about it in a different way, even before we came into this conversation, where, we were like, okay, yeah, let's unpack that hero villain thing a bit and see what we think. I didn't really expect it to go here, so that's interesting for me.
I think another kind of like quick point I'll make is when we all need to unite behind one strategy and oppose that one force, like uniting behind that one strategy also feels more right. Like when we're all coming together to achieve a thing. But with climate, and this is what I was kind of trying to get at with the protagonist antagonist thing, we're not all trying to get behind one thing. most of us agree that we need to address climate change, but there's, a bunch of different ways that we can/want to do that. Do we do we switch completely to renewables? Do we still use fossil fuels with carbon removal? Do we do renewables and carbon removal? Do we do solar geoengineering? Or do we do none of those and try to scale back? There's a bunch of different approaches, and there's a gray area between all of those. And so if you're trying to get into this space, there's a bunch of different stories, which are a bunch of different protagonists. Who do you follow?
I think some people look at that and think, oh, what a disaster. I was while you were saying that, I was like, well, this is not what we put on the poster, because there's not one thing and it's a million different things and you got to do 50 things to make any progress. I think flipping that around is the way I often think about it, which is there's something for everybody. If you're a lawyer, you
absolutely.
can lawyer on this. If you're an activist, you can activist on this. If you're an engineer, you can engineer on it. If you, know how to talk to people, you can talk about it, because all of those things are required. Climate people spend a lot of time arguing about, no, it's really a messaging thing. No, it's actually about technology. No, it's about policy and law. No, it's activism. You got to get people in the streets. All of those things have, a role to play.
Which means there's a role for all of us.
Exactly. Even if we solve the energy piece, the energy piece alone doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm the type of person that's the climate problem is kind of just the energy problem. That's my bias. That's not entirely correct, but I see things that way. Biodiversity people are it's about nature, right? Etc. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But it's not about doing just a singular thing. It's a bunch of things that need to change to, in the same way that a bunch of things change to get us to where we are. A bunch of different things have to change. And at least, the way I think about it is well, great. There's not one thing we need to do. It's not just we got to steal the plans to the Death Star and then blow up the Death Star. There's a bunch of things, and anybody can be part of it. I love this. I appreciate you coming in to kind of share your thoughts and mix it up here. Any last thoughts about the Sabrina episode you want to get off before we close out?
I'm glad we did it, and I hope we have more of those conversations.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you to our producer, Vish, for not only sharing his thoughts, but putting this episode together. Thank you to Sabrina McCormick. That is Dr. Sabrina McCormick to you. Don't forget, she's an IPCC author and a scholar and a filmmaker. And thank you very much to everybody for your early feedback on episode 1. On this episode, we love hearing from you. Always email us at podontherise. That's anytime. podontherise@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube. We hope to actually start putting out shorts and clips from these conversations and episodes. A little bit easier to digest. And of course, you can always hear the audio version on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. That does it for part 2 with Sabrina. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Here's the music of Claire Davis to take us home. More soon, y'all.